Are you getting ready to negotiate with a narcissist and having the hardest time having a winning mindset? Well, you're in luck. By the end of this interview with Mark Raffin, you're going to know exactly how to have a winning mindset when you're getting ready to negotiate with that narcissist. Hi, I'm Rebecca Zung, top 1% attorney and the best-selling author of the books Negotiate Like You Matter and Breaking Free, a step-by-step divorce guide. And I've helped thousands of people go from lives of drama, trauma, and chaos to step into lives of freedom, possibility, and purpose. And I do the same thing for you right here on this channel and in these videos and these interviews that I do. So before we go any further, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and then you'll get notified when I upload brand new content, new interviews, and when I go live on this channel. So this is part one of my interview with Mark Raffin. Make sure that you watch all the way till the end so that you will be all up to date when I upload part two. Welcome to another episode of Negotiate Your Best Life. I'm Rebecca Zung, and I'm super excited today to welcome Mark Raffin, who is a fellow podcaster and a fellow negotiation guru. And I'm super excited because we've been following each other's work and supporting each other in what we do. And he is a total expert in how to create a winning mindset, which is so important when you're dealing with a high conflict personality and narcissist. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me, Rebecca. I love your show and I love what you're doing, and it's an honor to be on here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so tell us a little bit about your background and history. How did you even come to be talking about negotiation?
Oh man, good question. So right out of university, I started a career in sales and high-ticket negotiations, paid off all my student loans in the first year through all my commissions, which was fantastic. Realized I had a knack for it and having persuasive and influential conversations. Then I went to the other side of the table. I worked in procurement for a very long time. And then a few years ago, I decided I wanted to do my own thing. So I decided to leave the corporate world and start what's now Negotiations Ninja, which is a training, coaching, and content company, all focused on developing and delivering the most engaging negotiation content in the world, which is what we try to do every day. And so our entire goal is to make sure that people understand that negotiation can be taught. It's not something that is, native to only a few people and that only a few people can master. You can learn it, and there's a very specific way that you can learn it, and you can get better at it, and you can get significantly more value out of life than you think you can.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love what you're up to, especially because a lot of my people, my viewers, my listeners, they just feel so beaten down.
Yeah.
So, why is a winning mindset important?
It's critical. Actually, it's not just important, it's required. In order for you to do well at negotiations, you have to believe that you can do well. I think it was Henry Ford that once said, whether you believe you can or cannot, you are correct. And
one of my favorite quotes in
love
the whole
that
world.
one, right?
Me too.
It's so powerful, and it's so true, because and look, I don't mean to say you're not going through a difficult time and that your emotions around this are not real and the experiences that you've had are not real. And I certainly recognize that what you've been through is difficult, but it's important to realize that you can get through this, and you can actually develop a negotiation strategy that helps you to win. Because unless you start to change your mindset that you have power and that you have leverage, then you will never develop the strategy that's required to get the things that you need to get out of that negotiation. And when I talk about leverage and I talk about power, people think that And it's natural for people to think this, given the experiences that they've probably been through being in a traumatized situation, like a lot of your clients have been, or a lot of your listeners have been. But power in and of itself, or leverage in and of itself, is not a bad thing. It's been used by bad people, but it's not a bad thing. You get to use that as well. You get to use all of those things too. And you can use it for your benefit. Just because it's been used by someone else to hurt you or to hurt people that you love doesn't mean that it's not a tool that you could use. So I want to make sure that I distinguish between power being used for good and leverage being used for good, and leverage and power being used for bad. They're not bad things. They're just tools that you can develop. And so once you get your mind wrapped around that, you can start to really think, okay, now what Mark is saying is that I can actually develop a toolkit around developing a proper negotiation strategy that allows me to utilize power and leverage as tools to help win this negotiation.
I love that. That's so right on point, and so aligns with what I think too. And in my book, Negotiate Like You Matter, the M actually stands for my value is defined by me, and I tell people all the time, you and you alone define your value, and you have to kind of start with that. Because if you don't, I always say 80% of a negotiation is won before you even walk into a room, but it's not all mindset. A lot of it is preparation too, but mindset is just so critical. So my question to you though is, for these people, excuse me, who, they just feel like the other person always has all the power. They're always winning. They not only do they feel that way, but that's how it's shown up for them in their lives. And they've also been traumatized. They just feel like their brain is scrambled eggs in some ways, because they've been gaslit so many times. So where do they even begin?
I think one of the things that people need to recognize is that they've been conditioned to believe these things. So yes, the feelings that you're feeling are real, but recognize that you've been conditioned over the course of this relationship to feel the way that you feel, to feel like you have no power, to always feel submissive, or to always feel like the other party is dominant over you. And it's literally a power play. It's called conditioning for a reason, because they've led you down the path to believe that you have no power in the relationship. And so a few of the different ways that they do it, there's a bunch of different types of power that they could use, but coercive power, which is like the use of threats and bullying, right? So if you don't do this, then you'll be in a lot of trouble, right? That coercive power has been played in your mind over and over and over again, with the threat, and sometimes the follow through of the threat, that if you don't toe the line, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And so naturally, your body's response, your mind's response, is to go, oh shit, I'd better toe the line, otherwise I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. Or, which is equally as bad but sounds better, is reward-based power, which is where if you do this, I'll give you this, right? Here's your reward for towing the line. Both are bad. There's a time and a place for them, don't get me wrong, and you can use those things in your negotiations, but if they're used by bad people for nefarious means to control someone or to control their life, then naturally your mindset is going to be, okay, I'm obviously subordinate to this person. They're more dominant over me. They're using this power. And you don't even realize that this is going on, because this type of conditioning is being done, generally speaking, over the course of an entire relationship. And so you've developed this mindset of always being subordinate. Here's the thing. They're doing this on purpose. They're doing this to make sure that you always toe the line. You don't have to live this way. You don't have to be like this on an ongoing basis. And so recognize, a place to start is just recognizing that these things have been used against you for a purpose of control. The second thing that I would say to you is when you're getting...
I just wait because I
Go.
want to make sure I say something about that point, because that was a really, really excellent point.
Yeah, go for it.
And so what I see is a lot of times those threats are actually not even anything that they could follow through on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I'm taking the kids away from you. You're never going to see the kids again. It's you're going to I'm taking every penny and you're going to be living on the street. And they believe these things, and they come in and they talk to me as the lawyer, and I go, well, that's a bunch of crap. So let's just push that one over and keep going. So, and they immediately feel better. And I think, okay, so people need to know that most of the time the stuff they spew in a divorce situation, like in this coercive way, these threats that you're talking about, is usually a bunch of crap. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I say that before you go to the next point.
No, and let's talk about that for a second, because I think this is really important. This is why it's important to make sure that you seek counsel, right? Because you don't know, especially if you're not knowledgeable about what you're getting into or what these threats could mean. No one's going to blame you for not knowing. It's okay to be ignorant, but what's not okay is to not get help. Because now that you know that you don't know everything, you don't know about what's going on, get the help that you need. There's an amazing quote by Mark Twain, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but he says something to the effect of, "I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which have never happened."
Right.
And so you're being conditioned to worry. You're being conditioned to expect the worst. And the likelihood of those things happen, not to say that it doesn't happen, I want to be clear, the likelihood of those things happening is pretty low. And so we're playing, and this is where it becomes difficult, because now you're playing your logos against your pathos, right? Your emotion against your logic, to determine what is real and what's not real. And to try, what I would recommend for most people is try your very best, and it's very difficult, I don't discount that, to remove emotion from the decision-making frameworks that you are going through, because your emotion only clouds your judgment. Look, we've been hunter-gatherers for the longest time in our existence, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of years we've been faced with scenarios of fight or flight or freeze, right? Saber-toothed tiger comes along, we've got a spear, it's fight or flight or freeze. And the way that the brain works, right? The amygdala and the hypothalamus are starting to interact with each other, and then it hits the adrenal system, and now it releases all of these stress hormones into your body, and so cortisol's rushing through and you're freaking out. That is your body's evolutionary response to stress and threat. And no one blames you for that, because it's literally how your body has been evolved to survive for a long, long time. You've got to almost fight that evolutionary response to get through understanding what the next steps are going to be. Because if you let that emotion cloud your judgment, then you're not going to be able to make the decisions required to move this forward. And the only way for this to get better is for you to make very clear decisions about what you want your future to look like. Because without that, then you're always going to be stuck in this spot. And that's why it's so important to get the help that you need.
Oh, I love that. It's such a perfect, beautiful explanation. You put that so eloquently and explained it so simply so that people can really understand why it is so important to take that emotion out of it. I love that. So what is the second thing?
So the second thing that I think that you need to do on an ongoing basis is something that you recommend all the time, which is to document, to make sure that you've got your documentation prepared, planned, all that other kind of stuff. This happens in corporate negotiations as well as any type of negotiation, really, the better prepared that you are, the better that you're going to do in the negotiation. Have that documentation laid out. Make sure you've got all of your supporting evidence. Make sure that you've got everything that lines up to ensure that you are best supported to your position going into that negotiation. Because without that documentation, without that preparation, without that strategy, it becomes significantly less likely that you're going to succeed in the negotiation.
100%, 100%, and learning how to organize it and all of that, and that's, you know, what I talk about in my programs as well, like just figuring out, because, you know, yes, you need to have a good lawyer, but, and that's what I was just talking about on my interview on your show, which is, yeah, it's important to have a good lawyer, but you can't just completely rely on the lawyer, because
yes,
you are in possession of the majority of the information. The lawyer does not have ESP. So the lawyer knows the law, but you have the information. So, you know, you're the one that has to organize it and figure out how to present it to the lawyer so that the lawyer knows what to do with it.
Thanks for joining me for this part 2 of my conversation with Mark Raffin, the Negotiations Ninja. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, now's a great time to do that and hit the notification bell so that you will be notified when I upload part 2 of my conversation with Mark. If you are getting ready to negotiate with a narcissist, make sure you grab my free Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet. Don't walk into a negotiation without it. You can get it at the link below, or just go to winmynegotiation.com and it will be all yours for free. If you are dealing with a narcissist and you want more support and you want to connect with others who are also dealing with narcissists, come on over and join me in my free private Facebook group. It's called Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung, and I'll drop a link to that below as well. If you like this video, you know what to do. Give me a like, give me a share, drop me a comment. Let me know that you were here. I'm so glad that you were here, and I will see you in part 2 of this conversation with Mark Raffin. Until then, remember that today is a great day to start negotiating your best life.